And for everyone who is joining, we're just waiting for a couple of more people to sign up, and then we'll be starting shortly.
Howdy, everybody.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi, Mayor. How are you?
Doing great. Doing well. We had the grand reopening of the Martin Luther King Jr. pool this morning. It looks great. Whether you're a swimmer or not, please go over there and go inside and take a look. It's really impressive. And then I was with a group a little while ago that gave 12 computers away to students at Charleston Development Academy. So I've been having some fun today. It's been good.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, very good. So are y'all good to get started?
Yes.
All right. So I'd like to call our little meeting to order. Join me in a moment of silence as we just reflect upon all the things going on in the city and the world today. And pray for God's grace. Amen. All right. So Amy's got, I think first we're going to talk about the stormwater budget here. We hadn't talked about that yet in a while, and then get back to our deliberations on the general fund. Amy, you want to lead us on?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Great.
Okay. So this is just I've sent this to the ad hoc committee last night, but just a kind of overview, and Matt is going to come on and share his screen and go through some things with you. But I didn't know if you have any questions, maybe we wait until after Matt goes through everything. Is that okay?
That would be great.
Okay. So Matt, are you there?
Yes, all set.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing so you can share. Okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to say real quick, I'm sorry, that all the requests that he's mentioning in his presentation are included in this budget, and the savings from the stormwater bond is also reflected in this budget as well.
Okay.
All right. I click on the right of one of many folders. Let's see, I think I jumped into presentation mode instead of undo that. Not used to being in my office. It's much harder to do it in the office than it is at home.
Ah.
Well, all right. Hopefully you're seeing the presentation at this point. Just a quick overview of the Stormwater Department budget request for the year. Those of you who are here on Budget Ad Hoc last year. It's a similar presentation format, but we're just going to run through a quick overview of the department, talk about the 4 major functional categories: the project management, MS4 program, floodplain program, and field operations program. We'll touch on, during the project management section, the budget request for a small project engineer. And then we'll move into sort of the 2 programs that I think probably bear a little bit more discussion, as they're one is a reasonable portion of the budget, which is the infrastructure rehabilitation plan and how we're progressing with that. And then the other one is a sort of an area of a lot of discussion, which is the emergency pump support plan, where we basically mobilize temporary pumps during emergency events. So just a reminder, the department's split into these kind of 4 functional categories. The administrative split's a little bit different than this, but this is how that works functionally. We have a project management group that manages our large scale capital projects, our small project allocation, operates and maintains the pump stations, and does basically engagement about our projects with residents and citizens. The MS4 program, that's our stormwater regulatory program. It reviews development and redevelopment projects, evaluates basins, large-scale drainage basins, for looking at those redevelopment and development projects. Basically does compliance, which is looking at like illicit discharge, dry weather screening, things are required to do by EPA basically as part of our MS4 obligations. And then educational outreach, which is also a required part of our EPA permit. Floodplain program, this is where we really manage the National Flood Insurance Program and kind of reduce flood vulnerability of the city. The Community Rating Systems program is the part of that that probably gets the most attention, where we basically establish, using the federal standards, what our flood risks are as a city, and then basically are eligible for insurance discounts based on those risks. They also do manage the grants for our repetitive loss buyout properties and severe repetitive loss buyout properties. We also have some elevation grants more recently that they're managing. They do compliance to verify that we're actually doing all the things that we tell the NFIP that we're doing, and then outreach to explain to citizens how flood insurance works and what flood risks are from more of like a storm surge based flooding than a rainfall flooding. Finally, field operations. This is sort of the bulk of the personnel you see in the department. They're doing our maintenance of our drainage easements, currently rehabilitating our roadside drainage systems. They do some small construction projects, respond to citizen requests and questions about drainage issues in their neighborhoods, and then provide some support services as well to the department. So just kind of a quick overview. This is the way that we've seen the mission of the department, is to just very simply reduce the impact of flooding on the city. We're going to briefly talk about goals in the 3 functional groups. I'm going to squash, for the goals purposes, the MS4 program and the floodplain regulatory program together as one regulatory system. But basically, regulatorily, our goals, our immediate goals, are that new development must not contribute nor be vulnerable to flooding. Redevelopment should improve flooding and reduce existing vulnerabilities. And then the last one is an easy one to forget. It's to protect water quality. That's actually the Clean Water Act is kind of the foundational federal legislation that allows us to have many of the stormwater requirements we have, as well as stormwater utility fees and a lot of these other features of stormwater. So it's an incredibly important one to remember, even though sometimes here we lose track a little bit with the flooding priorities as well. But it is one that we need to make sure we're addressing. From a capital project perspective, we're managing our funded projects to mitigate existing flood impacts. We're identifying and prioritizing potential projects to mitigate existing flood impacts, and we are maintaining the functionality of our constructed projects. Those are our pump stations and other kind of built infrastructure that we've installed. We also provide the maintenance on those activities. Operationally, we're rehabilitating our existing drainage infrastructure to return it to kind of full functionality. And then we are developing a drainage infrastructure asset management program, where basically we use our existing resources to provide as high a level of service as possible in that infrastructure system. Basically taking those goals and then looking at how are they applied budgetarily into what we do on a daily basis. All of our revenue for the operations come from stormwater utility fees. That's the $10 per month fee on residences. There's a prorated amount for non-residential properties, developed properties, based on how much impervious area they have, similar to that would be impervious on a residential property. So it's that same $10 per month kind of expanded out for how big the relevant or how small the relevant property is. That money then is used to pay for the general expenses. We have, and I have a pie chart here because it's good to remember that this is, since it's revenue from our fees, it's kind of a closed pie. You can slice the pie, but you can't make the pie bigger very easily. The personnel fees currently, that's salaries and overhead expenses. That's about $5 million per year. Our operating expenses, that includes the $1 million small project allocation, any contracted cleaning we do, as well as sort of the construction and safety supplies for the field operations department, fuel, fleet operations and maintenance work. That's $3,750,000. Capital purchasing in this case is really buying kind of smaller scale capital items similar to like pickup trucks is kind of the standard one you'd see here. That's about $100,000 per year. And then lease purchase, which is where you'd see us purchasing primarily a Vector truck each year and a generally one piece of rolling stock or like a heavy equipment. It's about $500,000 per year. I think it's worth pointing out that if you take all of those expenses, not kind of saying what they're for or how they're used, but it is the total amount of money that we expend equates to about $2.28 per foot of our drainage system that we maintain in the city. We've got about 4.1 million feet of ditch and pipe that we maintain throughout the city. So it's about $2.28 per foot per year if you took all of the money that we have available and basically just assigned it out per foot of drainage system. Again, our operations, we've got about 4 million linear feet of stormwater system. Project management, now just to get into, again, how do we expend that money that you just saw? The project management division has 4 project managers, a construction inspector, an AutoCAD technician, and an outreach coordinator. We're currently running the 15 large-scale capital projects you see on the right. Those are all multi-million-dollar, multi-year projects. This group also manages our $1 million per year annual small project allocation, which we're requesting again for 2021. Manages emergency repair work contracts, brick arch work, check valve program, and then any in-house design work we do or contracts that we run from a departmental standpoint. They also oversee and maintain our pump stations, the Concord Street pump station and the MUSC area pump station. And they're currently working through the rehabilitation plan for that Concord Street pump station. This is the area that we've requested a new position with our available funding. This would be another basically small project manager position for the $1 million small project allocation. Basically, we're getting to the point with looking at the previous slide, the number of large capital projects that have come online over the last 2 years, where we are starting to really be bottlenecked on getting to the small project work without putting large capital project work on the back burner. So this is an area where our funding is basically outrunning our resources more than any other area. So this is a really critical piece for us. It would be the #1 priority by far for our department to be able to continue making progress on our capital project and small project work. The cost of this position, basically salary and overhead rate, comes out to about $120,000. Obviously, that's a recurring annual cost for a permanent position. The MS4 regulatory program has a manager, 3 engineers at this point. We just have 1 more engineer that we're looking to hire, 2 inspectors, 1 asset manager that we're looking to bring on board, 2 administrative assistants. This is a regulatory group that reviews over 500 development and redevelopment projects per year currently, and that's looking to increase with the addition of the single-family residential and small project permitting that was basically included in the new stormwater manual. Includes pre-construction, permanent maintenance agreements. We also do basin evaluations, again, looking at these larger scale basins for evaluation of new development, redevelopment projects. We've added the James Allen Creek TMDL into that over this current year, and then moving into next year, where we're basically dealing with the Enterococcus is the measurement tool that we use, but fecal coliform, basically contamination in James Allen Creek, and that's an EPA requirement with the TMDL. We also do our compliance here, facility inspections, and basically good housekeeping practices on our own facilities, but also reviewing illicit discharge, basically things that are being put into the stormwater system that aren't allowed. post-construction inspection, dry weather screening, and work with Ashley Cooper Cooperative Extension, which is a part of Clemson, for our outreach activities. Floodplain program, that's one manager and one flood technician that manages our CRS program. And then our grants are basically our flooded property acquisition, demolition grants, and elevation grants this year. And they also work through our compliance activities to make sure we're complying with those requirements, and then outreach to help citizens with questions on how flood insurance works. Field operations, this is our largest personnel side group. It's one true superintendent, 2 assistant superintendents for 3 total, 7 foremen, 10 Vector operator positions, 8 equipment operators, and 29 maintenance workers, which are sort of the hand clean ditch crew primarily. They basically are doing our easement maintenance, vegetative cutback, herbiciding, do our roadside rehabilitation work, do our kind of small scale construction work for culvert repair, minor ditch installation, box replacement, then do some support service work for us. So I'm going to move straight into the infrastructure rehabilitation. Unless there's any questions, we can always take questions at the end too, but infrastructure rehabilitation. This is where we're basically going back through the city and trying to bring all of our existing drainage infrastructure back up to its original design capacity, if not better. The open ditch system. So this is the roadside open ditches. And I should take a second here. We also have a lot of rear yard ditch system. The rear yard ditch systems that we maintain as a city that have easements and maintenance history on them and are built and constructed, those we've actually gotten back. We've rehabilitated all of those at this point, and we're back onto a recurring annual maintenance cycle on those. So that's been a good point of success for the program, that those are now annually maintained. We'd like to get to a twice a year maintenance ideally on those, but they are all being regularly maintained at this point. And I think it's been something that's been pretty well supported by the community. And it's something that we have kind of had as an early success story. And then moving into the open ditch systems, these are roadside systems, or roadside ditches. We've done this work with in-house forces. We have about 114 road miles of roadside drainage system. Typically there's a ditch on both sides of those road miles. So it's about 228 actual miles of ditch. To date, we've done 40 road miles of rehabilitation just under the last 2 years. That work rate varies a little bit depending on how many hurricanes we get and how many other events occur on our work schedule, but we are averaging about 20 road miles per year, and we seem like that's a pretty good projection moving forward. So we're estimating that we'll be through all of the open ditch system sometime in 2024, again, depending on those exact productivity numbers. So moving into the closed systems, we call them. This is basically pipes. Our current efforts here, we do perform this work with in-house forces and contractor forces. We have about 312 road miles of closed pipe system. Some of those, if you're in the peninsula and some of the older portions of town, you'll only have 1 pipe per street running down the middle of the street, typically in the peninsula. If you're in the subdivisions or in any newer neighborhoods, you're typically having 2 pipes, one on either side of the street running down the street. So the numbers of miles of pipe is a little bit more complicated than it is for open ditch, but it's probably somewhere on the order of 400 to 500 miles of piping. That's one of the things that we're working on with the asset management program to get a better handle on those exact numbers. To date, in the last 2 years, we've only managed to rehabilitate about 6 miles of this system. Most of our Vector trucks really respond to work requests, grade inlet cleaning. They've been supporting the open ditch crews and cleaning out driveway culverts and driveway pipes, doing some basic outfall maintenance. So we haven't had a lot of proactive success. Most of this has been contractor work that we've done. It comes out to about 3 road miles per year. This doesn't include the brick arches. Obviously, that's not a super desirable rate to clean out the entire system at that 3 road mile per year. So we've been looking at different efforts to accelerate that. Basically, we do have our IDC contracts. We've had some success with that. We've basically set up additional contractor cleaning. It's about $10 per linear foot of pipe is what we typically expend in cleaning. It varies depending on how much sediment there is in the pipe, how large the pipe is, how much traffic control is necessary, if there's dewatering or not. So kind of a series of expenses, but you're generally looking at around $10 per linear foot of pipe. Based on work that we've done in laying out, again, our approximate number of miles of pipe, plus we did with the DuPont WAPU project, which many of you are familiar with, the drainage basin evaluation. Our consultant did a very thorough condition assessment of the portion of the basin that we modeled for that project work. So they were able to basically calculate the percentage feet of pipe that were needed, basically sediment removal in that basin. And we were able to take that and project that out. We actually add a little bit of a factor of safety, as DuPont Wapu is a little bit newer than some of the areas like the peninsula and some of the more inner areas of West Ashley and James Island. But it's a little older than some of the outer areas. So we projected this out, kind of did some calculating work, estimated about 100 miles of pipe that we need to clean. That comes out to roughly at these rates, about $5 million of contract cleaning that's needed for that rehabilitation. This does not include repair costs. It's really hard right now for us to get a hard estimate on how many of those feet are likely to need repair, and that right now the majority of our pipe cleaning has been in areas with failures. So I think it's skewed very high right now in what we're seeing that needs repair versus cleaning, because we really right now are primarily cleaning things that have failed and therefore need repair. But we're still putting that number together for the estimating of repair costs. We've worked pretty hard with BFRC to try to figure out how much money we could kind of, again, shift around within that pie to get additional funding into cleaning so that we can start moving through this pipe system. As there's a lot of flood issues, again, that we feel could probably be alleviated, if not, probably not eliminated, but at least alleviated with better pipe maintenance. So our 2021 budget request, we got up to about $650,000, just over $650,000. That would at this rate give us an estimated completion sometime in 2028. Again, that's going to vary a little bit depending on how much repair work we find. There's certainly some uncertainty in there, but just kind of giving a general time frame with what we've got to work with budget-wise right now. So we are trying to accelerate, obviously, over that 3 miles per year to a substantially higher cleaning rate. Shifting into the other kind of project area or program area that's been in a lot of discussion are the emergency pump operations. So we've been trying to come up with a more standardized approach for deploying pumps during emergency events. It started out sort of being like a named hurricane response. Obviously, we've had over the last couple of years a number of storms that have popped up that were not named hurricanes that caused some pretty severe flooding. We've also had some named hurricanes that really had very little impact in the long run to the city flood-wise. So we are trying to basically have a more quantitative approach to how pumps get deployed, and that way we can budget for them appropriately. So we laid out 3 scenarios based on the last 3 years of weather data, and I will say all of this is obviously predicated on past performance, which does not necessarily guarantee future results. So this is going to depend on how many storms we get and on how aggressive the National Weather Service is on forecasting those storms. But we looked at, again, 3 scenarios. First scenario saying that looking at 3 major pump deployment opportunities, one being the pump that gets deployed just north of the Septima Clark on Allway, which really drains out kind of that crosstown Septima Clark road corridor, the lowest point of that road corridor. And then 2 additional 6-inch pumps, which generally get deployed sort of in the area of Colonial Lake where we have some really low areas that just do not drain out if they get significant flooding. If we only deploy these pumps when there's a more than a 3-inch rainstorm predicted, we estimate we'd look at about 8 deployments per year in a typical year. That would cost us about $144,000 per year. If we move to the second scenario and we say, okay, a 2-inch storm, we're going to deploy sort of those smaller pumps, but only deploy the larger pump in a 3-inch event. That takes us to 8 deployments on the 6-inch pumps, the smaller pumps, but 18 deployments on the smaller pumps and 8 deployments on the larger pump, which comes out to about $204,000 per year. Scenario 3 then is if you say basically for a 2-inch predicted storm, we want to deploy all 3 of those pumps again, looking at 18 deployments for all the pumps, that pushes us up to about $324,000 per year. The Allway pump is a larger, more expensive pump deployment. Is part of the reason the numbers look a little more confusing than you might immediately expect. But those are kind of the 3 options. What we put into the budget at this point was scenario 1 for 8 deployments per year, roughly at those 3-inch predicted storms. That seems to be about where we really have a chance of damaging flood situations, but we wanted to at least lay out the options in there, but the current budget shows that $144,000 per year aid deployment rate. I also want to touch base on sort of some new departmental tasks. I mean, obviously the department was created about 2 years ago into a city that sort of had all of these features being handled to some extent with the existing departments. So there's been sort of a little bit of a process of figuring out exactly what the department does and does not do. So these are kind of new tasks that we've taken on over the last year or so that are kind of just incorporated into our existing resources. Many of them are things that we're extremely well suited for. It just does sort of, obviously we can only stretch the pie so much. So we've taken over flood elevation certificate reviews for basically all building construction, substantial improvement and substantial damage evaluation. We've taken over development review of drainage infrastructure and as-builts of that drainage infrastructure. Taken over plat review for drainage easements, make sure their easements are being set aside appropriately. Single family home, stormwater and grading review on those properties as they get developed. Maintenance requests for stormwater features on city facilities and linear park properties. Acquisition of property and easements for stormwater projects. Maintenance of properties obtained for stormwater project work. So that's like lawn mowing, structure demolition, some of the other smaller stuff like shed removal. Tree removal on ditches or ponds on city property, rights of way and easements. Right of way dedication manual update, working with legal to help update that dedication manual. And then engineering, providing some admin support for the engineering group. Just some current challenges as we look at kind of the budgeting future. The condition of the existing pump stations. Those are, the Concord station is a little bit more than 20 years old. And we are just started on kind of our rehabilitation design work for that system, but that will have some significant expenses over the coming years. And then the MUSC pump station isn't too far behind that one. There's also, of course, as we bring new pump stations online, those will have to get incorporated into our owning and operating costs as we budget moving forward as well. The capital project workload versus project manager capacity, we touched on that with the new small project manager, but as more and more of these projects move into construction, that starts to be a higher and higher personnel investment as basically they take more time on, there's a day-to-day basis with construction rather than sort of a more of a week-to-week basis on engineering and permitting generally. Hiring and retaining our Vector truck operators. Those are CDL drivers who have to basically also get dirty. So it's a hard combination. So it's a skill set that's very, very in demand right now. So that's been very challenging. And heavy equipment operators, and we're obviously an area that's booming for construction. It's a very difficult area. We'll get people trained up, they sometimes move over to other groups, or we have trouble attracting them in the first place. And that's something HR has been working with us on and trying to figure out ways to do this, but that's something that continues to be a challenge for everyone in the area, not just for the city. And then we just talked a little bit about mission creep, departmental overlap. So we're trying to figure out what exactly is the final position of the department. There's many things we can do. Many of them are good things that definitely need to be done, and just trying to figure out how does that fit into the budget and how do we adapt and adjust based on those issues. So that's all I had for the presentation. I'm happy to kind of jump back through any of it if anyone has any specific questions, but we did address the sort of the three major program changes from last year's budget, which are the addition of the new small project manager, the additional funding for contractor cleaning of the closed pipe system, as well as the update on where we stand on the open ditch system, and then the additional funding based on like a quantitative deployment of emergency pumping operations. So appreciate it. That was a lot to sit through.
Yes, boy, we got a lot going on. Thank you, Matt. So those three things you just mentioned, the extra project manager for small projects and the extra funding for cleaning those closed systems, that's included in the projected budget for this year at the $10 per account rate?
Yes, yeah, everything that was shown on there, Amy has included in our draft budget.
Gotcha. All right. So Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And Matt, thank you as dry as that was, it was just so important. We heard all of that. Some of the things that you had mentioned with this sort of switch over between you and I guess Public Works and Utilities, does that require any kind of budget modification between the two departments?
So it's a good question. I mean, right now we are basically operating under just the utility budget. So it's that question of what do we use the utility operations budget to do as a city is really sort of some of that question. It's eligible for those activities. They're all the activities we mentioned are good activities that are beneficial to the city. It's just trying to figure out that exact split and how we work through funding everything that we want to do.
So I mean, but you've taken on some added work that just sort of made sense. I mean, I was following that breakdown on the slide, but did that require you to pick up more expense at the same time that you had to shift money from Tom's department?
No, so we've incorporated all of that activity into our existing resources in the department.
Okay. It wasn't a budget saving process, I guess is what I'm trying to come across. For either department.
So I guess that whether public services experience any savings or not, or any of the other departments, that might be a better question for Ms. Wharton. I know for the stormwater department, obviously it did slightly reduce the amount of time we have to spend on other activities, but we did incorporate it into our existing resources. We didn't ask for any additional resources really to handle the additional work.
Thanks, Matt. And I bother about it a lot, and I appreciate all the work that he's done, and as responsive as you are to the needs of my community, needs of my constituents. So y'all do such great work, and everything's important what you do here. So thank you so much.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yes, Matt, if we had to do further reductions, where would that fall on your budget?
So the stormwater department is funded out of the utility operations. Again, basically the fee that's charged through the CWS fees, and I can certainly let Ms. Ward speak to it if she wants to. So far, it's been a relatively stable revenue source. And since it is a closed fund, we haven't had the reductions that you've seen in some of the general fund items. We have the hiring freeze, similar to other departments. We've had a few positions that we have hired even with the hiring freeze, as we've had people leave and needed to replace them. But we don't have quite the same impacts because that's the upside and downside of having a fixed pie, is that it can't go anywhere else into the city, but it also can't get any bigger.
That's right. It's not impacting the stormwater fund at all, Councilmember Gregory.
Okay.
There's no, yeah.
So let me open a little conversation with y'all about the stormwater fee. We're at $10 now, and we had increased it. Remind me, Amy, of the increases we've done to the stormwater fee, say in the last 4 years.
So I think it was we did $1 increase 2 years in a row is what we did. I think,
Right.
Yeah, from 8 to 10.
But we did not increase it in 2020 for this year, correct?
No, that's correct. And there's no increase in 2021 either.
Not proposed at this point, but I'm questioning whether we should consider that, because we got lots of projects that are on the drawing boards, and at some point we're going to be looking at an additional bonding to help fund some additional projects, and we got to have the funding stream in place to pay off the bond. So, and of course, with the stormwater budget, if we got more stormwater fee than what Matt's annual operating expenses are, then those funds could help finance an additional bond for projects. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So, and we had done a study a few years ago about other jurisdictions. I think Columbia was at $15 and Myrtle Beach was at 16 or 18. So relatively, we were still kind of middle of the road or on the low side of other jurisdictions. And let me say that unlike the property tax, that nonprofits and, you know, I'll just throw out a couple of names like the Port Authority and the Medical University and institutions like that that don't pay property taxes, they do have to pay the stormwater fee, as they should, because we're spending all this money, you know, to address drainage and flooding. So I'm just, well, that's one side of it, the future projects. And then the other question I would have is whether if we up the stormwater fee a little more, could anything that's in the general fund now on an expense side be covered by, legitimately covered by stormwater fee?
No, all those operations are in the stormwater fund. There's really nothing that we could reimburse the general fund for.
Okay, just checking. But anyway,
Mayor.
Councilmember Shade.
Mayor, the point that you brought up is very important for us to consider about increasing those fees, in particular where we stand with other jurisdictions. Because when we started this, I think 2 years ago or so, we were so far behind the other municipalities on what they were charging. For some reason, I thought it was at $6, but I think that maybe sound too low. So we're still behind other jurisdictions significantly on what they charge. But that does not show how much more, if we increase that fee, what that's going to turn into real dollars. I don't know if maybe you can give that to us now or at some point.
So if you increase $1, it's about another $1 million. So 50 cents would be a little bit over $500,000.
And so funding some of those increases that Matt's looking for would be covered by that increase. Right?
I think they've already covered the request for this year.
Yeah, everything that Matt asked for, we have included in the draft budget that you have in front of you.
Okay. Including the new personnel.
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead, Mayor.
I'll see that third line on there. Savings from refunding of the 2012 stormwater bond are reflected in this budget as well. So we've already using that savings for basically our operations. And you know, we had discussions at a couple of meetings. Councilmember Gregory suggested this, that gee, it'd be nice to have those savings and utilize them on the needs we have over at the Central Park Wamba Basin over there. So I just get back to the fact that the needs are so much greater on projects than the funding sources, that if it's not unreasonable, which compared to Columbia and the other cities it's not, that we ought to continue to inch up our stormwater fee. Councilmember Gregory? Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that you are bringing up, you know, a topic that's always unpopular, raising costs of things. I would be very interested in having a new comparison of what other jurisdictions are charging at this point. You brought up Columbia, and it's my understanding that when the COVID recession, you know, hit a small business community in Columbia, the small business community, that they had an authorization that they could actually use money in their stormwater fund to establish a little revolving loan fund for the businesses to tap into while they were all waiting for, better government funding. So I've never been party to the fact that we would have any kind of, flexibility to deploy stormwater fees for those crisis situations, but I think it would be an interesting, somebody must have enabled them at whatever, legislative authority that we have to go through. So I think it would be worth looking at comparisons and then how this fee might be able to be a rescue set of funds in the future.
Well, I hear you. I appreciate that. I must say that the needs for stormwater projects far exceed, our funding sources. So I wasn't thinking that we'd spend it on other stuff. I do want to try to keep the integrity of stormwater funds being spent for stormwater purposes. I personally think that's appropriate. Yeah, but
I
hear
agree
you.
ultimately. I'm just saying in terms of, short-term, short-term purposes that end up being repaid. So anyway, I
Right.
do support your looking at what the other jurisdictions are doing currently.
Right. All right, Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Matt, for that wonderful presentation. I think it still doesn't cease to amaze me the fact that in the city of Charleston, this is all new, relatively speaking. I mean, your department, the prioritization of stormwater in a meaningful way is new. And I mean, it's just incredible to see how much progress and how much work has been accomplished over a relatively short period of time, how many exciting projects are in the works. And as the mayor said, I mean, the needs, and we all know this, it's obvious, the needs far outstrip the existing funding sources for this very important work. And I don't want to throw any other departments under the bus. I mean, everything we do is wonderful. Put aside, law enforcement and fire, but I mean, look at our Parks and Recs department. You look at some of these other departments relative to stormwater. I mean, it's really something. So I'm in favor of doing what we can to give Matt and his team the resources that they need to continue to do this most important work. And to the mayor's point, and to Councilmember Jackson's point about uses for this fund, this is something that I sort of have a little bit of background in my legal profession. Is there's actually a very important legal distinction between a tax and a fee. When we pay our taxes, our federal income taxes, for example, that money could go to a F-16, it can go to a national park, it can go to somebody's pension somewhere. But in other words, there's no nexus, there's no strings attached with regards to who pays what and what they receive in return for their tax dollars. Well, that's not the case with fees. With fees, there has to actually be a tangible nexus between what you're paying and what you're getting and how much that money is being charged for. And that's all spelled out in our state laws that authorize local governments to impose these fees. So number one, if we were to consider a fee increase, which I'm very open to, number one, it wouldn't be a tax increase, it'd be a fee increase. There's a very big difference with that. And number two, the public will know and have the confidence that this money is going towards stormwater. I mean, introduce me to somebody in the city of Charleston that doesn't think we've got a stormwater management issue in this city. I think our residents will gladly step up to the plate and contribute a little bit more to this effort, particularly if they know this money is going to what they're paying for, number one. And number two, that they start seeing these meaningful improvements on the ground. And I believe that is the case. I mean, over in my district, over in South Windermere Shopping Center, we still haven't solved all of our problems, but between a check valve on Ackerman and some great work that we've done to clean out some of those marsh outfalls behind the shopping center in conjunction with Senator Sen and others, it's made a difference over there. I mean, we can make differences, without these $100 million projects by increasing our small project fund by getting some more guys out there with equipment doing this work, I mean, we really can start making some serious progress with some low-hanging fruit that is in desperate need of being picked. So I just wanted to mention those comments, the distinction between a fee and a tax, and for $2 more a month on everybody's water bill, the price of a bad cup of coffee, we could have $2 million more in our stormwater department. I think that's a real question that I think is worth discussing and engaging with the public on.
Correct. Would any other council members like to opine or ask a question?
On a follow-up to what Councilman Appel just mentioned, Matt, if we did increase the fee even by $1, could we direct that money to this small project fund, this $1 million small project fund, and increase that fund significantly?
So we could increase the small project fund. I mean, that would certainly be an allowable use of the resources. If we did that, we'd probably need another project manager because we're very stretched, even with the existing projects and project managers. But I mean, that's something we could look at reallocating. I mean, we'd have to, that's always that assessment whenever you add funding of making sure that you're accounting for what that funding does. But yeah, we could certainly come up with a plan to look at how that would work.
And that just goes in line with what Councilmember Appel was mentioning. That has the immediate impact on lots of neighbors and lots of neighborhoods. That these are not the $50 million or the $10 million projects we're talking about. These are the $350,000 projects that have such an important influence on our constituents. They see it immediately. It impacts the whole region on a collateral manner. So if we can do that, but of course, what you just mentioned, you add another project or two, you add another body we need to throw in there, that's the other increase. And then we have to maintain that person for as long as that person stays on the payroll. But if not this year, I think I would like to see some more discussion about increasing the fee, just generally to take care of the small project component of all of this. That's critical.
Well, it's not just the very small projects, but kind of the medium-sized projects that I see coming up, and then some we've started that are probably going to cost a little more than we thought. King and Hughie Street, Councilmember Mitchell, is probably, according to Matt, going to cost a little more than we originally anticipated. We were just talking about Central Park Road and the projects that have been identified there. The DuPont Wapu area has 5 or 6 projects identified there. The little wall we want to put around Lockwood Boulevard is $1.5 million or so. So you add all these things together, and we just need the revenue stream in order to fund these projects going forward, including the whether you do it with a bond or you pay as you go, either one way or the other. So let's do this. I think you've done an excellent job on this budget. I would like to ask Matt and Amy, whoever appropriate, to just go back and let's do a quick comparison to the other jurisdictions and see how our rate compares now and still to those other jurisdictions, and come back at the next meeting and see if we have the appetite for a small increase in the stormwater fee. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Appel?
I promise not to do one of my classic long-winded speeches, but I just wanted to ask a question about, would it be possible to set up different fee districts by geography, to sort of have different fees for different locales, just as a way to establish perhaps like a tighter nexus you know, for certain project funding. I just point, we don't need to talk about it now, but just another thing to put, you know, maybe onto the table, because I think that, you know, if people truly understood and could see that they were getting what they were paying for, truly a transaction between these fees and these deliverables, I think we might be surprised by what we see out there in the community.
That might be more of a Susan question, but we can check on that.
Yeah, and I can certainly weigh in a little bit, or we can talk about it in more detail later with more accuracy. But like you mentioned before, the utility fee, the part to remember the utility fee is it's got to show that tie. Right now, we do it off of impervious area, so it's basically the volume of water you're contributing, kind of judges or adjusts how much fee you're paying. But there are certainly other ways to do it, and we could look at that. There's also, and this is getting outside of my immediate area, but there are also, you know, special assessment districts and things that you can put in that outside of even stormwater from like an improvement perspective, not a TIF, but similar concepts to TIFs, where you do fund projects off of the people who will benefit from the project. And that's something I know a lot of jurisdictions will do that for like linear infrastructure projects, where they'll do an assessment of people with frontage on the project, or and then a partial assessment on people who will connect into that project because of the value changes that it will create for those properties. But we can certainly talk about that in more detail and with more accuracy at a later date.
All right. Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We talked about this last year. I don't think we got around to doing it, but I certainly think we ought to do it this year. I think we ought to have some sort of signage, or anytime we're doing a project in a neighborhood, on the major right-of-way where stormwater money is paying for that, I think we'll have a sign, you know, another project paid for by your stormwater proceeds. We did that with the half-cent sales tax, and that's why when you all would ride around, you'd see these signs with road wise, and it would have a half a penny years ago. That actually came from out of Charlotte. Charlotte had a highway tax like that, and every time they did a project, man, because theirs was plain, it just said another project, highway project being paid for proceeds from your half-cent sales tax. I think all the projects that we got going on, I think we can benefit greatly by just having signage up that says, let people know, because they think that money goes into, I guess, the abyss or something, but it actually goes into something that actually help them for their business, or certainly their home or neighborhood. So we definitely need to start going that forward, because we're going to need to come back and ask for more proceeds. And right now, I had a lady Tuesday call and blast me out because she wants to go on Live 5 because she doesn't think she gets a fair shake on her tax dollars. I mean, her tax dollars wasn't paying for nothing. We actually do a pretty good job with tax dollars. We just don't tell. We're very poor at telling our story. I say that collectively. We all are very poor at doing that, and we can do better.
Well, I remember that idea, and it's a good one. And so, Matt, I know you don't have a marketing department, but maybe you're. We have the fixed signs when we have a big project, you know, but it would be nice to have some portable signs, you know, when you're out, you know, for a few weeks or a month or two at a mobile location that you can move around. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, we can certainly add that in. That's a good suggestion. We do have the very large fixed signs on our major capital projects for the Low Battery, Spring Fishburne, some of those. But you're right that's only a small portion of what we do. It's good to get people to see all the other activities we're doing as well.
Listen, when we go out and we take those you send those back trucks out there, Matt, to help suck out, you know, ditches and drainage and stuff. Man, when we're in those neighborhoods, if we had sandwich board signs or something like that saying, you know, another stormwater project by doing, you know, being performed by your team or whatever, everybody would be glad when they see those signs in their neighborhoods. I bet you that. So anyway, so yeah, we need to come up with something like that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Miss Amy, you want to take us on to the next, back to the general fund? Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Very good presentation.
Sure. So, general fund, I feel like we just talked about this, so there's not a whole lot new other than some ways that we might be able to balance the budget. So we went over all the assumptions for the revenues on Tuesday. So I wasn't going to go over them again unless you all have questions or wanted to talk about anything. And then there was some mention of fee increases, which we don't think will be completed in time to include in the budget. We might be able to do a nominal amount, but there's more meetings that are going on this week, particularly tomorrow. So we'll know more for the next meeting on those. There's just a couple of fees that we're looking at. So right now we're, revenues is pretty much the same, $186 million like I reported on Tuesday. Expenditures, almost 205 million, nothing really changed. Almost a $18.8 million deficit right now for the general fund. For the expenditures, we had high priority requests that we told you was a little over $3 million that we had added back in that we've not really talked about. I sent those to you last night as well. So if we can review them, if you would like to, line by line. There was a few that I highlighted that we might consider taking out, and there were 2 higher dollar requests for repairs to fire stations that I did remove because I'm going to utilize other funding for those 2 things. So that was about $400,000 that we reduced in the high priority requests. And then enterprise fund budget, still the same, 34.4 million. We also went through all the assumptions on Tuesday. So unless you have any questions on those, I won't go over it. We did have one increase in fees for parking, residential parking permits that I wanted to mention that we did include in this budget. So we increased it a little bit. Owner permits by $5 from $10 to $15. Rental permits by $2.50 from $7.50 to $10, and booklets from $15 to $30, which that just equates to $1 a day, which is less than a meter. So we didn't feel like that was a significant increase. We've not increased those fees since we know 1996. It could have been before that, but that's the knowledge of some of the staff that's been here that we know we have not increased them since 1996. So the total revenue increase for the parking permits would be $91,000. And one thing that we did do this year is we got an online permit module this year to make it more efficient. It's really a better way to do it anyway, but with COVID and everything, it was another way to limit in-person meetings. So we went ahead and did that. It was a $30,000 cost this year. This increase will cover the licensing fees for the software going forward, which is about, I think, $15,000 or $13,000 a year. So that was one increase that we did include. It's nominal. It's not that much, but I just wanted to let you know that. Any questions on that? Yes.
What are we talking about then, Amy, as far as increasing residential parking fees? Where are we now with those? What's the base on those?
So it went, I think it's like $190,000. And so we went up, or it's $109,000. And then, so we went up by $91,000. So it's not a lot of money even normally. It's usually about $109,000 a year.
But that's 24 years of not doing any increase over time. That's a drought of not doing that. So are you recommending that we do something incrementally?
No, I mean, we wanted to make sure we covered the cost of the software so that we can do the residential permits. And then, you know, we did a comparison to other cities around us as well, and we're pretty low. So we felt comfortable with that increase, that we're not too high, but not too, you know, we probably could have gone up a little bit more, but it's considering we haven't raised them in so long, we didn't want to go too high.
When I see that parking spaces downtown are going for $100,000 to $150,000, it's not unreasonable for us to be thinking about an increase in those fees.
Okay. Well, any other questions? Okay, so then expenses. So we're on $30 million. So we're having, right now we have a $4 million surplus in the enterprise funds. And so right now our budget deficit is 14.7. We reduced it a little bit from Tuesday when we all talked. We were about $1 million higher than that. So what are our options to balance the budget? This is where we have talked a lot about revenue options, a little local option sales tax, not giving the 100% back. I've reported that if we kept 25% of that revenue, it would produce around $2 million. If we kept 50% of it, it would generate about $4.1 million. And then I've given you the impact to the citizens before, but I'll give it to you again. So if we kept 25%, property tax bill would go up $21. We kept 50%, property tax bill would go up $45, and that's in Charleston County. And then respectively, Berkeley County would be $10.80 or $21.60. And then also millage increase. I reported out the millage bank that we had that we could raise millage by 3.6 mils. So increasing taxes by 1 mil would produce 1.6 million, which is the value of 1 mil. 2 mils would be 3.2 and 3 mils would be 4.9 million. And then I did some impacts as well, so I thought you might want to see that. So this column here, this is obviously what it would be in 2020. This here is if we gave all the rollback, all the local option sales tax back to the citizens. And then if we kept 25% or if we kept 50%, that would be what the tax increase would be with a 1 mil increase. So it's $12.33 or $57, Charleston County. $22.80 or $33.60 for Berkeley County. And then I did all of the millage increases. 2 mils, Charleston County, that's what it would look like. And 2 mils, Berkeley County. I'm probably going too fast, so let me know if I'm going too fast. And then 3 mils, Charleston County. And 3 mils for Berkeley County.
Amy,
Yes.
Keith, if we, pass the 3 mil increase to kind of adjust, I guess, some of the savings from the reassessment, and somehow in January or prayerfully February, the feds pass something that help local governments. Can we have mid-year adjustments to come back and and return that to the taxpayers?
So I guess we would set millage for 2021 in September, and the tax bills would go out in October. So we wouldn't actually set millage until we would budget based on what we need it to be for the budget,
Right.
but we don't actually set it until September.
Okay, so hopefully if we did, vote for an increase on the revenue side, a combination, some thereof, we get some good news in January or February, we got plenty of time, to make the adjustment.
Right, but then you're talking about stimulus money, that's one-time revenue as well. So you wouldn't want to take your revenue away.
I understand, but hopefully we're going to have a vaccine, sometimes into hopefully the first 6 months of next year, and hopefully the economy will be picking back up. I mean, we'll be in the same positions, we were in, August, September this year, but hopefully better treatment protocols, a vaccine being in place, an economy that's maybe opening up a little bit better, which would give us better projections for the 22 budget.
Right. And then, yeah, remember the fire stations we have coming online too.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So, and Councilmember Waring and other members, I think that point is particularly apropos to the credit on the local option sales tax. Right. So if you go back to that page, Amy, where you show the 25% and the 50%, so the difference there isn't increasing the millage, it's just saying we're not giving as much credit.
Right.
And so if we do get some federal help, we can easily by next September decide that we will give the full credit because we've been made whole, so to speak.
Right.
And,
Right.
and I think in this situation, that's appropriate.
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. Now, what's the dollar amount again, Amy? I know you said it, but can you repeat again if we did 25% or 50%?
So it's 2 million for 25, if we kept 25%, and it's 4.1 million if we kept 50%.
Okay. So then we did that. Then we instead of having an $18 million deficit, then we're down to 14.
Well, we're at 14.7 right now, deficit.
All right.
So,
Okay.
so if you did the 50%, that'd get you down to
10.
10.6 million out.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilmember Gregory. Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Let's say the stimulus package comes through, okay?
Yes, sir.
What's to say that we're not going to be the same place in 22? Particularly if the projections are that we're not going to possibly even be whole until 22. And I'm at the point I'm making is, I don't think we should consider giving that back, those dollars back, because we may need it in 22.
Well, I mean, I hear your point. I mean, on some level, we got to take it a year at a time.
Yeah.
We certainly hope our business license revenue, Councilmember Gregory, will be better in 22 than what we're projecting in 21. You know, if we get to September of next year and we don't think business license revenue is going to come back, and parking revenue and those other things that we're really missing right now, I totally agree with you.
I will just say this about business licenses though. So we've already reduced business licenses by $7 million in 2021 because we realized it's based on the year before. So, and with the businesses closing, it's likely because the business license fee in 22 will be based on 21 that those businesses aren't going to come back as much. So I feel like we probably still would have a business license fee issue in 2022.
Understood. But hopefully not as much. But, you know, I think Councilmember Gregory makes a good point. But, you know, it's kind of one-time revenue for us in a way, using the local option sales tax credit. We've not been using it before. So you can make the same argument that it's one-time revenue.
Well, it's policy that we're setting though, that would be going forward. So it's not, you know, it's not just one chunk that we would get one time because it's a policy that we're setting. It's an ordinance that we're setting, that we're changing, that would be, you know, going forward as well.
Correct. But I mean, you can set that every year, depending on your budget, can you not?
So, you know, usually you either give it all back or you decide in an ordinance what you're going to do. And you know, necessarily, I mean, I guess we could write an ordinance says, you know, we won't give back more than whatever, but I mean, typically it's a set amount that we would say that we're either going to give back all the revenue fund, or we're going to give back 25% of it, or we're going to, you know, that type of situation. It's not just a rolling amount every year because we have to set an ordinance for it and it has to go through council for approval.
Understood. Well, I've made the argument in years before that it's a revenue source for the city that we've never utilized, and as with all the needs that we have out there, and the challenges we have with the authority to charge for things, that we ought to use it.
I'm in agreement on that, Mr. Mayor.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree, Mr.
I
Mayor.
agree. I agree.
All right, so that would be a portion, Amy, 4.1 million, say.
Mhm.
What other great ideas do we have for making up the other 10?
So that's really what we have for revenue. And now we have expenditure options, which is going to
Mr. Mayor?
include personnel and contracts that we need Susan's advice on. So
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, yes,
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Jackson.
I move for the council to enter into an executive session for the purpose of discussing these matters of personnel, employment, compensation, and contracts that do require our legal counsel's advice.
I second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, all in